L'chaim, welcome everybody. My name is Brian Klopotic. I'm a professor in the Department of Ethnic Studies, director of the Native American Studies minor. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all here tonight. I'd like to welcome you to this wonderful event that's been brought to you by the Native American Studies program, the Tribal Climate Change Project, and the Confederated Tribes of Coos Lower Umpqua and Sayusla Indians, and Community Rights Lane County. We're especially grateful to have any of you who have traveled from a long distance, so thank you very much for coming to join us here tonight. We're heartened in times like this to come together, to talk, to think and work, and to be inspired by longtime leaders in Indigenous environmental activism such as Winona LaDuke. I want to thank our sponsors tonight, and I particularly want to give Hayu Masi to the Confederated Tribes of Coos Lower Umpqua and Sayusla Indians for their generous support of funds and fish, and, and for serving as our tribal sponsor and host for this event. As a tribe with roots here in this Ilahi, in this land, what's now Lane County, that stretch back thousands of years, any discussion of land use and rights of nature has to include tribes as empowered voices at the table. We're honored to have Tribal Chief Warren Brainerd and other tribal delegates here with us tonight, and we'd like to turn the stage over to them to begin. Please welcome Chief Warren Brainerd.
Good evening. I'm Chief Warren Brainerd of the Coos Lower Umpqua Sayusla tribe. I've seen 77 winters and hope to see about at least 20 more. Our people have inhabited these lands long before the state boundaries were ever defined. Our ancestral territory encompassed 1.6 million acres of resource-rich lands laying along the Oregon coast, from 10 Mile Creek in Lane County in the north to Whiskey Run Creek in the south in Coos County, and extended inland to the top of the Coast Range. Our ancestors were the stewards and caretakers of all the lands since time immemorial, and continue in this role until the 1850s, when our people were rounded up and imprisoned and removed from our land under force of arms. Historical events lasting through the 1875 displaced our ancestors many times. Those that were strong or fortunate enough and strong enough to overcome the displacement, disease, starvation, mistreatment inflicted on them by the government eventually returned to their homelands. When they returned to their homelands, they found that their villages and the numerous resources were substantially degraded and destroyed in the wake of the European settlements. Our tribe was left with only broken promises, including a treaty that Congress never ratified, and to this day the tribe has not received any compensation for the stolen lands. We never stopped being a tribe. We've never stopped fighting. For us, stewardship is a way of life and has been since time immemorial. Today, our government and people are working to protect and enhance what is left of our culture, our cultural resources, natural resources, water and air along our rivers, coastlines, and watershed. We stand in solidarity with the Standing Rock and the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe in their effort to compel meaningful consultation between governments for protection of their resources. We face similar challenges. We struggle to protect our heritage, our living culture in the Coos Bay, at the Jordan Cove, and along the Pacific Connector pipeline. Protection and quality of our environment, safeguarding our ancestral burial grounds, irreplaceable sacred places, it is our duty for our ancestors and future generations. We do not oppose this project. However, as an elected official of the tribe, I view it as my moral obligation, as well as my obligation under the tribe's constitution, to protect our cultural resources. As proposed, construction of this massive liquefied natural gas, LNG, export facility and the pipeline route will damage areas containing significant cultural resources, including village sites, ancient burials, a rich and complex system of fishing weirs, and traditional hunting and gathering areas still utilized by our people. FERC and the Army Corps have regulatory jurisdiction over different components of the project, as do the state and local governments. 10 years ago, the applicant proposed to construct an LNG facility and promised that there would be little ground disturbance. A few years ago, the applicant announced a change in the plans from LNG import-only facility to the export-import facility and pipeline, but again assured us that there would be little, if any, ground disturbance activities. In 2015, on the eve of FERC's approval of the final environmental impact statement, the applicant informed us there would be massive ground disturbance activities at the Jordan Cove terminal and power plant site. The ground disturbance would include liquefaction techniques referred to as vibrocompaction that would basically involve stirring and blending, compaction, and destroying graves of our ancestors and cause permanent damage to not only this sacred site, but our tribal community. And yet the applicant insists that the sparse archaeological studies that were performed are sufficient for the now extreme ground disturbance measure currently proposed. FERC has essentially agreed with the applicant position despite our protest and despite the protest of other area tribes and the protest of the Oregon State Historical Preservation Office, SHPO. For several years, FERC staff have put off and dismissed consultation with the tribe. They have taken the position that since we intervened in the site certification proceedings to protect our rights under the NHPA, National Historic Preservation Act, NAGPRA, the Native American Graves Protection and Reparations Act, and other statutes, that any meetings with us would be impropriate ex parte communications. Instead, FERC instructed us to address our concerns to the applicant. The ACHP Advisory Council for Historical Preservation agrees with us that FERC's ex parte rules do not relieve FERC's obligation under Section 106 of the NHPA to consult directly with the tribes. When it comes to consultation, an applicant should never be allowed to serve as the proxy for our federal trustee. FERC dismissed the applicant this spring on grounds unrelated to resource protection. However, the applicant has sought reconsideration. While FERC has issued a trolling order to mull over the applicant's request, the applicant confidently that FERC will grant its motion and approve the project, continues to seek other federal, state, and local permits for the project. No work has stopped. We are very concerned that FERC will ultimately issue the site certification and that FERC will greenlight the applicants to desecrate our ancestors, destroy our ancient village, dredge through our ancient submerged weirs. We have joined with other tribes impacted by this project, and now the SHPO is requested that FERC substantially modified the flawed, outdated, inappropriate memorandum of agreement that was contemplated and completed before the applicant proposed to disturb very cultural sensitive areas of the site. The ACHP, Oregon SHPO, our tribe, other area tribes have significant concerns that burials, villages, and other sensitive resources will be lost through the proposed ground disturbance activity. We are very concerned that FERC is going to withdraw its dismissal and quickly approve the project based on the existing record and recommendation in the EIS. The disregard for our concerns feels like a continuation of the mistreatment and assimilation that took place in the 1800s and 1900s in an attempt to erase our culture and identity. We have interest and obligations to maintain a resilient, substantial, clean, safe, and productive environment and protect our cultural resources for ourselves and for future generations. Our tribe joined the Confederated Tribe of the Grand Round, the resident tribe in this area, in welcoming Winona LaDuke to talk with all of us this evening about stewardship, community, connectivity, and the rights of nature. We thank you for the time you shared to hear our story. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief Brainerd, and that's an important reminder that this doesn't just happen at the Dakota Access Pipeline, it happens here in Oregon as well. Again, I'd like to extend thanks to the Kuslower, Umpqua, and Sayusla tribes for helping sponsor this event. And I also want to take a moment to thank our other sponsors, for there are many. To put together an event like this, it takes a lot of people working together, and I'm going to give thanks to each of these sponsors right now. So thanks to Community Rights Lane County for bringing this to us. And it feels funny to say thanks to Native American Studies, because that's, the thing I'm a part of, but thanks to Native Strategies Group and Native American Studies at the University of Oregon. And to the Tribal Climate Change Project, the Department of Ethnic Studies at the University of Oregon, the Department of English, the Environmental Studies Program, the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund, the Office of the Assistant Vice President and Advisor to the President on Sovereignty and Government-to-Government Relations, which is what we call in short, we call it the Tribal Liaison's Office, the U of O Multicultural Center and ROAR. Thanks to the Many Nations Longhouse, to the Oregon Humanities Center, to the Center for the Study of Women and Society, to the Environmental and Natural Resources Law Center at the University of Oregon Law School, to the Coalition Against Environmental Racism, to the Museum of Natural and Cultural History, to the Department of Women's and Gender Studies, to Community Alliance of Lane County, to Oregon Country Fair, to Mountain Rose Herbs, to Organically Grown Company, to Lane Community College Peace Center, to KLCC, to KBOO. Is that how you say it, KBOO? All right. To the School Garden Project of Lane County, to Hummingbird Wholesalers, to the Blackberry Pie Society of Cottage Grove. I wish they would have provided some blackberry pie tonight. That's right, we'll take them up on it later. Forest Web, the Rural Organizing Project, Huerto de la Familia, Industrial Workers of the World, the NAACP, Oregon Wild, Cascadia Wildlands, Lane County Green Party, Beyond Toxics, Oregon Community Rights Network, Willamette Farm and Food Coalition, 350.org and 350 Eugene, Interfaith Earthkeepers, Jamaica Breakfast Program, Civil Liberties Defense Center, KXCR, Sustainable Cottage Grove, Aprovecho, Freedom from Aerial Herbicides, and Healing Matrix. And I apologize if I left anyone off that list, but there are a lot of people, and we're just really happy that everybody came together to make this event happen and that everyone's out here supporting us tonight as well, or supporting this event and coming to learn and be inspired and get some good feelings from each other. So I want to give a few special thanks to there are a lot of people behind the scenes that make this kind of stuff happen too. And I want to thank Kathy Lynn from the Tribal Climate Change Project, Jesse Beers from the Coos Tribe, Donella Alston, Maya Nix, Carson Viles, Amy Thomas, Angie Hopkins, the Native Strategies Group, and all the people behind the scenes who help pull things like this together. So I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Michelle Holman from Community Rights Lane County. Michelle and Community Rights Lane County came to us with this project earlier this year, and we're just very pleased to have this partnership to bring you this exciting and timely event. Michelle.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you. Thanks so much. And really, Chief Brainerd, really thank you for your words. They mean a lot. We take them to heart. We have your back. We stand in solidarity with you. It's so beautiful to see you all. Thank you for spending your evening with us tonight. You won't be disappointed, I can promise you that. It's really fun to work on a project where everybody wants to be a part of it. You say, hey, you want to sponsor Winona LaDuke? And it's like, yes, we want to be in your movie. So thank you, thank you. It was really awesome. And I want to really specially thank Brian and Kathy Lynn, Brian Klopotic and Kathy Lynn, indispensable with all the little details, a million little details, and they really held my hand. I just give thanks. I'm humbled by your generosity and grateful for your wise counsel. Serious. Yeah. So a couple years ago, Community Rights Lane County decided we need to introduce the whole concept, the notion, and the strategies that surround rights of nature work, where nature's rights are legally recognized and protected by law. We thought that for this introduction, we would do well to defer to the wisdom of this continent, and that's when we approached Winona. We know Winona to be a long-time credible activist and defender of the earth and her inhabitants. We respect her sensibilities regarding stewardship of the land, and as her presence at Standing Rock demonstrates, Winona walks her talk. Community Rights Lane County does stand in solidarity with the people of Standing Rock. So the perception of nature as property denies nature her inalienable rights to exist, persist, and flourish. When you walked in the room, you may have noticed there were slides, PowerPoint was being presented. Rights of nature is not just theory. It is actually occurring in communities all over our country, and every day, all around the globe, rights of nature laws are being moved forward. So this is a real thing. We can do this here in Lane County as well. Along with rights of nature, which is really the foundational premise for community rights protects and acknowledges and includes environmental rights, right to clean air, soil, and water, worker rights, the right to a living wage and equal pay for equal work, and democratic rights such as the right of local community self-government, where we get the right to write and pass laws that protect our communities, our health, safety, welfare, and all the values that we hold dear. Community rights activists challenge unjust law, laws that protect harmful corporate activities that allow damage to occur where we live. We work to replace those unfair laws with laws that are just and protect our communities. This may sound like the work of lawyers. This is the work of we the people. We do get legal advice. We have legal advice from CELDEF, praise Jah for CELDEF, the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund, lots and lots and lots of help, lots and lots of hours. But they know that we the people have to do this work. It's up to us. So do not be faint of heart. You too can be a community rights activist. So right here in Lane County, the current work is centered around 2 ballot measures which we hope to qualify for the May 2017 ballot. The first one is the Freedom from Aerial Herbicide Spraying Bill of Rights, which will ban aerial spray in Lane County. Yes. And the reality is that spraying from helicopters is a legally protected activity. So in order for us to enforce that, we have an attending ballot measure, the right of local community self-government charter amendment that gives county residents legalized authority to enforce the spray ban and in the future to write and pass other laws that will protect the health and safety in our community, right here in our county. So, yes, big work. We recognize that while we have a spray problem, we also have a democracy problem. We live under a system of laws that doesn't really care about what we want. And we believe that decisions about what corporate activity takes place in our communities should be made by us, the people who will have to deal with the damages that are caused by those activities, not corporate heads aided by government, motivated by profit, who don't have to live with the damages that they incur. So community rights works to create democracy where we the people are active decision makers. We are part of an international community rights movement, which includes Ecuador, Nepal, India, Australia, Colombia, Cameroon, and well over 200 communities that have already passed rights-based initiatives in 7 U.S. states, including Pennsylvania, New Mexico, Washington, New Hampshire, Ohio, Colorado, and Oregon. And there are a number of communities in a handful of other states that are moving the next wave of rights-based laws forward. So this thing is growing, it's super exciting, and you definitely want to get on this train. It's happening. Many of you Lane County people already know about the hassle we've had with our own county commissioners. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, a whole heap. So, for those of you who don't know, after the judge gave us the green light to gather signatures on our amendments, during this process, 4 out of 5 Lane County commissioners, influenced by timber industry actors, decided they would write a law and they'll decide what the people are going to vote on before we even take it out. The one dissenting commissioner was Pete Sorensen. Shout out to Pete. It's a little cryptic. He's the only attorney on the commission, and he happens to know this is unconstitutional. So, the whole point is that the initiative process is our process. It's the people's process. It's how we legislate. When our government officials don't do what we want, and we know that happens occasionally, it's up to we the people to decide for ourselves. So we've got these we've got these commissioners who promised to come back in February to revisit this. They backed off due to public outrage, and thank you, Lane County. So they're coming back in February, which means we want to qualify these measures before then. If you live in Lane County and you haven't signed our petitions, please sign our petitions. We have a table out in front. We have anybody wearing a red shirt like this, probably has a board, and you can sign. Better yet, get yourself a board and become a signature gatherer. We could really use your help. We only have until February, so make that a priority. If you got some time, hit the streets. People love to sign this thing anyway. It's the righteous work. And if you haven't done so, we need the money. Democracy is not free, and it takes funds critical to moving forward the people's work. So please consider giving money. We have these campaigns coming up and education to do, so help us out. And then on your chairs, you probably noticed there's a list of things you can do to get involved. I just want to name really quick, Vanda Nashiva is going to be here Monday night at LCC Performing Arts. Super excited. We're going to host a Rights of Nature discussion to build on the work that's happening here. That's November 28th. That's sponsored by CRLC. You can read it. All the details are on that little sheet. Lane County premiere of the new community rights film, We the People 2.0. That's December 15th. And then a Rights of Nature discussion with Mari Margill of CELDEF, who does Rights of Nature work all over the globe. She's awesome. And then we are going to have a panel discussion. We will be presenting at PILC. Community Rights Lane County will be presenting at PILC around the rights of nature. Lots and lots of work. So we do this work because we care about the planet and we care about each other. And we really need to leave a democracy that we can be proud of for future generations. So thank you so much. Thanks to Winona for kicking off Rights of Nature in Lane County. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and I want to remind everyone, too, to hit those tables on the way out if you didn't hit them on the way in, that you can talk to people about things to do to support the causes that we all care so much about ways to give your time or give your money, however you approach it, to get involved in this movement. So for me, I'd like to point out how you can spend your money, too. We have just set up a fund, a professional development fund for Native students at the University of Oregon. If you'd like to support it, go to duckfunder.uoregon.edu. You can do that from your phone right now if you'd like to. I'll wait. I'm just kidding. And if you want to see more Native Studies events, you can go to our website, nativestudies.uoregon.edu. So, on to the main event. People always say that about someone like Winona LaDuke that they need no introduction. And you're all here tonight because you know something of the work that she's done. But people like her need an introduction more than anyone else so you can understand the enormity of her work, of her vision and her commitment, and to be inspired and maybe a little bit awed by how much a person can do. You can see a list of her accomplishments just by Googling her. She's been named Ms. Magazine Woman of the Year, won a Reebok Human Rights Award, has degrees from Harvard and Antioch in economic development. She's been a vice presidential candidate twice on the Green Party ticket. She's written 6 nonfiction books, mostly on indigenous environmental issues, in addition to a novel. And her essays appear all over the place. I'm really jealous of her productivity. She founded or had a hand in founding the White Earth Land Recovery Project, the Honor the Earth Project, the Indigenous Women's Network. The list goes on. She just keeps pushing and getting us to work harder and pulling people together. So I first met Winona LaDuke in 1992 or so, and she won't even remember this part, but she was working to stop hydroelectric development on Cree lands at that time. In northern Canada, and she made a stop at my college. And so I was inspired in that moment just by how down to earth and how bright she is. Like, she just is inspiring. And then I saw her speak on the campaign trail in Minneapolis in 1996. And then I had the good fortune to be her teaching assistant at University of Minnesota for a couple of quarters. I know you're jealous. And so now I teach a class modeled after hers here at the University of Oregon on Native Americans and environmental issues, and I teach her books in that class. So, bringing that knowledge to more generations of people. So in this long acquaintance, I've had some time to contemplate her role and to compare it with the work of others and to think about what she's meant to us. And Winona LaDuke has been committed to understanding the ways toxic values destroy the environment, assault indigenous communities, undermine the well-being of women, and promote an unhealthy and even deadly future for all of us. She's understood and, more importantly, been able to explain the amplification of those toxic values at the intersection of indigenous women's bodies and lives. And she's been able to explain how those toxic values affect each and every one of our futures as well. Beyond that, she's taken action. She doesn't sit idly by and complain about the state of the world, does she? No. She makes things happen. And in that, she inspires us all to take action ourselves, knowing what we can do, not by ourselves, but when we bring people together. So without further ado, let me invite you to join me in welcoming Winona LaDuke to the stage.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Thank you for that very gracious introduction. Ani nindoe maganaduk, nikagoy gitamagas, bine seque to go makwa ndodeum, gababani kagish, kaniganing, and dunjaba amigwich. Thank you all for the honor of being here with you tonight. I have a lot of friends out here, a lot of people I know for many years, really honored. People came out, all you Wintus that came from way down there. Right. So my girls, I have so much fun every time I see them. I just can't quit laughing. So really honored to be here. I feel like, first, this is an epic moment. This is our moment. Look out there, and we're the people that got a shot at stopping them from genetically engineering the world's food supply. We could do this, stop them from combusting the planet through oblivion, making a lot of other things toxic. We have the chance to do something that is great spiritually. And we're going to do that because of our relationship to our Mother Earth and the reaffirmation of our relationship to Mother Earth. And so that is what I was asked to talk to you about tonight, kind of this epic moment we're in. Sometimes I feel like Frodo and Sam, you know what I mean? It's like, wow, let's go. Because it's ours. There's no one else who's going to do this right now. So it is our moment to do these things, to make Minoaya Oma A King this good life here on this earth that the Creator gave us, and to make one that is here not only for us, but for our generations that have not yet arrived. So as I thought about what to talk about tonight, I was asked to speak about the rights of nature, thought about traditional cultural properties and cultural landscapes. Have you guys heard those terms? Those are kind of more academic terms, but it means how you live there. And I want to talk a little bit about that because if you live in the same place for a super long time, you understand all about the ecology of that region and the spirit of that place. And so it is not just that about the rights of nature, but it is also about our reaffirming our relationship to those places. And that is really a lot of what we must do and we must remember to do because we are in ourselves spiritual beings as well. And there is something that over the process of colonization and separation, we often let that power be taken from us. And there is no time like now to recover that power. This is the time to recover that power. As I look out there and forces that gather to the east, is that what we shall call them? the ascendancy of the Trump presidency, which to many of us is rather unbelievable, I feel it is really important for us to also talk about what making America great looks like. And I think we have a different idea, and that must be our process too. Because one thing that I refuse to do is to let them take from us our power. Whether it is, when they talk about that they have faith, I too have faith. I have great faith, but I'm not a Christian. When they talk about, what they want to see, we have vision too, and we must actualize that vision. So this is the place that I live. This is my lake. For those of you who know a little about me, I spent 10 years of my life in Ashland. My mother, Betty LaDuke, still lives there. I just came from there now and cruised up. But this is where I live. This is my territory. I live on the White Earth Reservation in northern Minnesota, a place of 47 lakes and 500 bodies of water, a place that is beautiful that the Creator gave to the Anishinaabe people, a place where you can still drink the water from a lake. That's a pretty good gig, huh? So I'm going to work on keeping that. That's my plan. Work on keeping that. Now, this is this time that we are in where there are many sacred beings around us, and there are many sacred places. I was working on my notes this afternoon, and I found this Lummi man named Justin Finkbauner. He passed away, I think it was last year. Really admired that young man. He said, "It's a sacred breath at the beginning and at the end. We have never surrendered our rights to access the sacred." The whole thing, he's talking about Cherry Point, is a burial ground, not just for ancestors, really old sacred beings. The separation between life and death is a very thin veil. They're there now, in deep relationship with the sacred, those beings. My mother used to cry about how the smallpox came. She cried about how the smallpox wiped out about 90% of our people. Nothing but skulls and bones there. That was our village. But that is our sacred place. Justin Finkbauner from Lummi, he told me that. I was looking through my notes, and I know this happens to you. You look through your notes, you find one old notebook, like I found this old notebook, and there's people in there that are no longer in this world, that they told me their story. And so I was thinking about tonight because the Lummi people successfully fought off a really big coal terminal. Do y'all remember this? And it was Justin and some other people that said, that's not going to happen here on our sacred place. That's not ever going to happen here. And so part of why we are, here is because we are people that believe and will defend our Mother Earth. This place here, Round Lake, if you look at history in Minnesota, in 1902, they call it the last Indian uprising in Minnesota occurred on Round Lake. That's what they say, the last Indian uprising occurred. Our people stopped them from stealing logs right there on that lake. We had a standoff that lasted a number of days, and all the non-Indian people came to support us, because they knew what was going on was wrong, so they came to support the Indians. I suppose they brought like sandwiches or something. They said they brought food and provisions, and actually they brought bullets too. It was like one of the great first solidarity movements, I really liked it. But I always say, they say it was the last Indian uprising in Minnesota, and I say we ain't done yet. So I want to talk about what it is to be in sacred places. As I look over this continent, I think of places in my own territory. I think a place is known as the place where the thunder beings rest in their migration from west to east. I think of the place that is the sixth resting place of the Anishinaabe in our migration. A place known as the place where the great Salt Mother lives. A place known as the place where life begins, and a place of the great swirling river, Minnesota. So let me tell you a little bit about those places. The place of the thunder beings is a mountain. There's Thunder Bay in Ontario, on the north shore of Lake Superior, and there are ancestors, and today we observe that the thunder beings move from the west to the east, and they rest at this place. But the mountain that is there is no longer called the mountain of the thunder beings. It is called Mount McKay, which illustrates one of my problems with America, which is the naming of large mountains after small men. And it is all over this country. I love everybody and I love men. But it is the idea of naming something as immortal as a mountain after something as mortal as a human, right? And the arrogance and anthropocentric nature of that. That's like it's all about us, right? Which I think is foundationally part of the problem, is the worldview that has come to be this American worldview, which is you put your flag on it, you stamp it, you name it, you claim it as yours. It's all good then. It's not. The place of the sixth resting place of the Anishinaabe is a place known as Spirit Mountain near the city of Duluth. And I told this story many times, but about 1996, I think, when I first ran for vice president, they told me they want to put a golf course on this sacred place, you know. And so many people came, gave me some tobacco and said, would you go talk at this hearing? I says, okay, you know, so I show up, you know, and I'm all like, you know, kind of rough from the road, we'll go with that. And I go in and they had this argument at the Duluth City Council because the Duluth City Council was going to give the lease. And the Duluth City Council had this argument about if they would let me talk. It was so funny. It was like being asked, you know, as some of you recall, in 96 and in 2000, Ralph and I were not allowed in the debates, right? So then there was all these signs that were like, let Winona talk, all over the city of Duluth, which I thought was so funny, you know. But then finally they let me in his long battle about if I could talk. And I was like, come on, guys. You know, and I go in there and they said, 3 minutes, ma'am. I says, okay, I got this 3 minutes. So I get up there. I'm super nervous. I get up there and I stand in front of them. And the room is packed, just like this, just packed with people. And it is every religious denomination, you know, and all the Native people have come out for this, you know, and we stand in there and I say, you know, in our migration story, it says we come here to this place, we migrate 5 other places first, we follow a shell which appears in the sky, it comes here. And then when it comes here, then we are told to go to Madeline Island. That's where we went. And so this is a part of our migration story. And I was super nervous, you know, but in succession, everybody came up and said the same thing. You know, but I had asked our Armadean people if I could tell that story, and they said, yeah, you tell that story. So I did that, and then, you know, all these people said the same thing in succession. Every church group came to support us in our right to be at our sacred site and our sacred place. And then at the end, this guy from the city council, of course, one white guy for the city council, comes up with this paper like this, and he opens it up, and he says, I'm reading here this anthropological report of a explorer's journal. I was like, wow, that's great. He said, it says that you're wrong. And that in fact that your people were brought here by the explorers. I listened to him, but I just want to say that this is what it is like being a Native person in this country. I just want to say that's what it's like. If some guy, you know, will correct you. He will correct your oral history with his Xerox. So I don't want you to, you know, that's what's going on. That's going on out in North Dakota. That's going on everywhere. We're getting ourselves corrected with some Xerox, right? So I said to the guy, I said, you know what? I know that one of those Ojibways hitched a ride with those explorers. I got that. You know, the rest of us were here. He was a little late. So I'll go see my cousins, catch up. I have no idea. You know, I cannot explain every Ojibwe in history, right? But the point was, so then they vote, and they all vote. It's, you know, they vote to oppose giving the land up for the golf course. And then the mayor wasn't even at the meeting. He overturns that, but in the end we won. In the end we did win. You know, so I want to say that's how it goes. The Great Salt Mother is a story of the Zuni Salt Lake. A long time ago it is said that the Zuni people lived with the Salt Mother. She lived amongst them. And then they acted poorly. And she was insulted by their behavior, is how it was told to me. And so she moved. So there's a place near Gallup, New Mexico, known as Zuni Salt Lake. Have you ever heard of this place? You're not supposed to go there, but it's there. It's a sacred place where people go to collect salt. And they collect their salt for their ceremonies. You know, and a lot of people in that whole territory do. Dene people, Hopi people do. Everybody goes there to collect their salt. But about 10 years ago, there was a proposed coal strip mine. It was called Fence Post Mine. and it would have dewatered the area. It's a spring-fed lake that has in the middle of it these salt cones, and it was a spring-fed lake. And in a spring-fed lake, you guys don't need the whole geology, but basically a coal strip mine will affect the underground springs, right? And so the Zunis fought them, in every spiritual practice they had, and they ran, and they had ceremonies, and they filed a bunch of, different administrative things, and in the end, they did win. So what I want to say is, that there are many times when all peoples have come up against stupidity. This is not the first time. This has been for generations. We've come up against stupidity after stupidity and bad project after bad project. And in many cases, we have won. The story of the place where life begins is a place known as the Arctic plain of the coastal plain of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And on that place, 150,000 caribou birth their young. And that is why the Gwich'in people refer to that as the place where life begins. And I think that is an apt description, probably a better description than Section 2002 or whatever it is called by the federal government. And that story, is still strong. That herd, I was just up in Northwest Territories, and that herd is still strong. The herd that is up there, the porcupine caribou herd, the herd that comes out of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. But that is a story that is ongoing. The story of this woman here is a woman who is an Apache woman who is trying to protect a place called Oak Flat, a sacred site of the Apache people given up to Resolute Mining Company, Rio Tinto Zinc for mining operations. And that battle is stronger, but that battle is still also going on. And this is the place. And this is our friends, the Wintus. Thank you. And these are some people that have come here. I was very honored to join them in riding and in ceremony. And I did not attempt the dugout canoe, but maybe next year I attempt the dugout canoe. I may be better paddleboarding than the dugout canoe. But they are people that would like to keep their land and their river, and they would like to not be flooded by a raising of the Shasta Dam for the benefit agricultural interests in California. And so this is a battle that continues today, but the reason I tell you these stories is that the rights of nature also exist within the construct of the social relations and the spiritual relations that people have to those places. That those relations are reaffirmed by our people. It is said, one time I heard it said that the difference between native religions and the dominant religions of the Christianity, Judaism, Islam, is that those religions were referred to as commemorative religions. This is very interesting because they commemorate very significant teachings by great spiritual leaders. Our religions, indigenous religions in the Western Hemisphere, I have heard called reaffirmation religions. Reaffirmation because in our spiritual practice, whether it is our dances, whether it is our Medewan ceremonies, or whether it is all of our, our feasting and our fasting, we reaffirm in each season or at each time our relationship to our Mother Earth. And, what I would suggest to you is that the challenge that we face here in North America is that it is essential that we collectively have come to live here. First, that you say, you're all going to stay here, so act like you're going to hang around. That's what I like to say. I have a really good friend named Mike Wiggins, who was the tribal chairman of the reservation known as Bad River on the shore of Lake Superior. Many years successfully fought a big mine project, a taconite mine, huge mining project. They would just pour in there. And he would listen to the hearings of the state of Wisconsin. And in those hearings, he would hear them repeat things over and over about the capital gains and the production and the profits. And he said one time I was standing with him, we were actually at Medewan ceremonies, and he's standing there and he says, seems like those people don't want to hang around another 1,000 years. And that is really what it is about in part. Mino Oma A King, making peace here with this earth. being the people that recover relationship, spiritual relationship, and learn how to act like we want to stay here. Remembering that this land, Oma, is also the Holy Land. The Holy Land is not someplace else. This is the Holy Land. It is here. And we are all here on this Holy Land. So in this time, let us put our minds together. Let us put our minds together to see what kind of future we can make for our children. So let me tell you the story of a place that is sacred today. This is a woman that is standing on the shore of the Missouri River. The Missouri River is known also as one of the more sacred rivers in the territory, a river which swirls at a place where there is a confluence of the Cannonball, known as the Cannonball, and the Missouri River. The Cannonball River is really a place where the sacred stones were made. And that is to say that in the current of the river, the sandstone in the confluence of the two rivers would swirl. The current would swirl around the sandstone and made these giant round rocks that, of course, the settlers referred to as cannonballs. That is why they called it the Cannonball River. But it's really the sacred stones of the river themselves. And so one begins to discuss what is sacred about a place. One has to begin with the intersection of all that is beautiful in that territory. And when you have the power of two rivers coming together, there is something that is much greater, much more beautiful than any of us would know. And that is the sacred stones that are created in this confluence. In this same place is the place where at one time, when I think about making America great, I think about 50 million buffalo. That's when America was great. You know what I'm saying? 50 million buffalo, single largest migratory herd in the world. The pounding of their hooves would change an entire ecosystem. The resonance of the hooves and the pounding of the herds would change how the water related to the soil and related to the plants. Just imagine 50 million buffalo. That's when America was great. America was great when there's 250 species of grass on the northern plains. Biodiversity, tremendous biodiversity. America was great when there was billions of passenger pigeons. That is when America was great. Now, we are people who have not seen all of that, but we need to be people who do not have ecological amnesia. That is to say, we cannot be people that forget that beauty and that greatness. Because someplace the spirits of those beings exist. And they count on us not only to remember them, but to whatever ability we have to bring them home. I'll tell you some stories about that in a little bit, but let me tell you a little bit of the story that we are now all watching unfold in North Dakota, in Standing Rock territory. So it is a long story, but what I will tell you is that the Missouri River is the epicenter of northern agriculture in this continent. That is to say, very much like the Nile River Valley. Now, I know in the mythology that created America, there's some kind of idea that we were just like hanging around and I don't know what we was all eating. But, someone had to come up with 8,000 varieties of corn before Monsanto, right? You understand what I'm saying? It's like we had this pretty good. We had 8,000 varieties of corn. That's a lot. We wasn't just chilling. We was working, and a lot of that was the work of women, actually collecting. If you think about actually a good portion of the world's food, as you know, is grown by women, because not only do we want to know how it grows and how it, when it arrives, but also we want to know how it cooks, if it tastes good, right? So seed selection, why would you want to grow something if it doesn't taste good, right? Seed selection is often the work of great women. So all of these varieties exist in this territory. In this territory, many different people live there. Mandan, Hidatsa, Arikara people. Smallpox epidemics devastated those communities. Early 1800s, many of those communities almost disappeared. That is something that is very little recorded in history, very little recorded in the memory. And the dams in the 1960s, called the Pick-Sloan Project, a set of dams assaulted the Missouri River. And in that assault on the Missouri River, that not only changed the ecology of the river for the benefit, it is said, of agriculture in that region, but the 200,000 acres that itself was taken from the Standing Rock Nation, the Hunkpapa people, the 200,000 acres contained 95% of their timber and 75% of their wildlife. They drowned a lot of the people's culture, which is what our people understand happens to us when you have big dam projects. And almost every big dam project in North America has flooded our people, That is what happened there, and that is how a people go from being wealthy to being poor. And so what you are seeing unfolding in North Dakota today is a result of a long history. It is not something that just happened. And so people tried to recover from that and never could kind of successfully get a grip on that. Because what would happen is some other Indian policy would come. For instance, they are told they are supposed to be able to farm. And then most recently, this lawsuit called the Keeps Eagle lawsuit has been settled. And in that, just like the black farmers lawsuit, all of those Indians were denied loans. Much of their land was allotted out to non-Indians, sold or leased. And so today within the Standing Rock Reservation, there are very few native ranchers. Compared to other reservations, there are some. But people were forced into poverty. And in that poverty, the state of North Dakota began to flourish. And the reason I say this is that all of us are kind of watching, I believe, with some horror, what is happening. 485 people have been arrested so far. The situation of those arrests, everyone has been strip searched. Many of them have been cavity searched for misdemeanors, right? I talked to Ron, his horse Thunder, former Tribal College president. I think he's the chairman of the board of the Tribal College now. Former Standing Rock councilman. He's a little older than me. He's in his mid-60s, and he says, yeah, me and the wife was standing there, was watching what was happening, and they kept pushing at us, and we just stood our ground. We just stood our ground. Those cops kept coming, He says, and then they arrest us, and my wife and I, we spent 9 hours in a dog kennel. That's Standing Rock. A lot of people, a lot of people have been hit with, this is tear gassing. People in the river. That was about 3 weeks ago. And this is the MRAP. Now, I myself did not know a lot about military equipment. This piece of equipment on the right from Stutzman County, I don't know why they had one, because there's only probably about 20,000 people in the whole county, and I'm not really sure why they needed that piece of equipment. But I think that Homeland Security bought that for North Dakota, right? And so that piece of equipment, an MRAP, is basically a war party to go. It's called a mine-resistant armored personnel carrier. A mine-resistant armored personnel carrier. And what I'm trying to understand is why North Dakota would need any mine-resistant anything. To the best of my knowledge, there are no landmines in North Dakota. There are a lot of nuclear weapons, which I'm trying to figure out who's doing the assessment of the earthquakes that result from fracking and how that's going to work out with the nuclear weapons silos in North Dakota. The whole thing may just explode from what I can figure. Y'all follow me on this? I'm talking about the earthquakes in Oklahoma, and so if you've got, 16,000 fracking wells in North Dakota, at what point are you going to have an earthquake, right? And who did the assessment of the earthquakes and the nuclear missiles thing? No idea. So they're already pretty well armed up there in North Dakota, but mostly with nuclear weapons and not with this. So that's the MRAP. First time I saw it. And then that thing there, somebody told me what that's called, I forget, but it has this big sound thing on it that busts your eardrums, right? And that's like the least of what they have been using on our people. The least of what they have been using on our people. Now, how does that all happen? What I want to say how that all happens is that we all, in civil society, don't pay attention to what's going on. And what I want to say is that, I live in Minnesota, which is just east of North Dakota. And in my 35 years of residency on the White Earth Reservation, I've spent a great deal of time dealing with problems that come from North Dakota. Largely it is coal generators and the mercury that ends up in my lakes from North Dakota. After that, it is like agricultural runoff, and the North Dakota blows over my reservation, right? Then we start on this battle with the oil. And, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, but, so we battled off successfully one oil company coming from North Dakota. And then I come out here and I see this. But what I notice is that from North Dakota, the first time I actually went there was for a Leonard Peltier evidentiary hearing. And I've seen a lot of crazy things there, but what I want to say is that for the past 50 years, the population has been declining steadily in North Dakota. A lot of people moved over here, moved to greener pastures as Americans do, moved to California, moved everywhere. And so at least for the past 30 years, people have been kind of flying over North Dakota and saying, hey, there's North Dakota. Look at that. Hey, that's where that movie Fargo was, right? Y'all know because y'all did it, right? People never went to North Dakota. And so they just flew over it. And in the meantime, what developed was basically we call it the Deep North. That's what happened. As they became the Deep North, the statistics on Native people are like the worst in the country. Two of the poorest counties are on the Standing Rock Reservation. Every statistic you do not want to have between arrest rates about 11 times that, higher for non-Indians over non-Indians, incarceration rates much higher, every poverty statistic, every health statistic, lack of infrastructure. 3 years ago, Debbie Dogskin, a woman on the Standing Rock Reservation, froze to death in her house, although she lived 100 miles from the Bakken oil fields. That's what I'm saying. It's like nobody paid attention in North Dakota. And nobody paid attention in civil society. And I know that this is Eugene is the place where people think good things and do good things. But it'd be really great if some of you would go to North Dakota. I'm just saying that because, what I mean is that the American Civil Liberties Union had one person for 2 states, North and South Dakota. The Sierra Club had one person for North Dakota because nobody wanted to work in North Dakota because it was cold. Nobody wanted to work in North Dakota because it wasn't cool and you couldn't hang out with all your cool friends and drink espresso, right? You understand what I'm saying? And so as people, we have collectively kind of failed in this because absent any check on government repression, you develop into an oil oligarchy. You develop into pretty much the Nigeria of the North, where your entire regulatory system is controlled by oil companies. There are 55 separate pipeline proposals underway in North Dakota right now. That's what goes on. You do weird things like, I walked into this hearing by accident last January. I was up working on trying to oppose fracking. I hear about this hearing on this thing called technically enhanced, naturally occurring radioactive materials. Did y'all hear that? Technically enhanced, naturally occurring radioactive materials. What's that? That's like fracking socks and fracking wastewater. Y'all follow me? So there's 16,000 oil wells, and what they're trying to do in North Dakota, which they did successfully pass, is increase the recommended daily allowance of radiation so they could put low-level radioactive waste in municipal landfills. Brilliant, right? Now, at no time in my life have I noticed that the recommended daily allowance for radiation has been increased, right? But in North Dakota, because it's called regulatory capture, the entire state is run by oil companies. That's okay. And so I'm telling you this because that's how this all happened. It didn't just happen. It happened because when the proposal came in, for the Dakota Access Pipeline, it came in and North Dakota was like, yeah, we'll do that. But some of the backdrop of that you should know is that for 4 years, a company called Enbridge came into northern Minnesota and proposed to put a pipeline through my reservation. That pipeline was a 640,000 barrel per day fracked oil pipeline coming from North Dakota. They proposed it 4 years ago, and for 4 years, I attended almost every regulatory hearing in Minnesota. My tribes said, we oppose this. and you're going to need to talk to us. And the state of Minnesota did not want to talk to us, did not want to talk to our tribal governments, so my tribes held their own regulatory hearings. And they said, we have jurisdiction over this. You are not acting as if we even exist, but we have jurisdiction. Non-Indian groups came out, everybody came out, and for 4 years we battled Enbridge in every regulatory process, as well as working spiritually, having all our ceremonies, and for 4 years we rode our horses against the current of the oil. After 4 years of battling Enbridge, in August of this year, one day after our 4th spiritual ride against the current of the oil, one day after that, Enbridge announced the cancellation of that pipeline. That pipeline was called the Sandpiper. And so we beat them on this round, by working really, really hard. But what that company did is that company went and bought 1/3 of this company, Dakota Access. And they emboldened them to be even more aggressive. And so what I'm saying is that what is going on out in North Dakota needs all of our attention. If you have not put your bodies on the line at some point, please continue to support us. I was talking last night and people said, what can we do? I said, send meat. I just want to say, please, don't just send us like sleeping bags. We like to eat meat. And, continue your support. But I'm saying it did not happen just out of nowhere. And so now the question that we are faced with is that this proposal is only one of a number of challenges to that river. There are already dams on that river which have impacted the quality of water. It is now the 7th most polluted river in the country. And the state of North Dakota, because of its lack of regulation and inability to manage fracking, which I'm pretty much sure you can't manage in any case, has caused itself to have widespread groundwater contamination, according to the National Academy of Sciences. So at some point, all of that comes towards a sacred river. And so from my perspective, and I think the perspective of many, we would like to see that the rights of that river are respected. The rights of nature are respected. In the case of this river, our sacred river. So I'm going to talk a little bit about rethinking where we are and where we go from here. This is art from my territory. This is known as Anishinaabe art, and it contains within it a set of teachings of Anishinaabe people. If you look closely, you see inside the beings themselves, we have a teaching that most of that which is around us is animate, has standing, has spirit unto itself. The other thing you see in this is you see these spirit lines that connect these beings. Can y'all see this, what I'm talking about, kind of? The spirit lines which connect these beings. And those spirit lines talk about the teaching that I'm going to talk a little bit about later, which is in Winona LaDuke, that we are all related. In Winona LaDuke, that we are all related. And one of the things I think is really important, you're a very enlightened bunch here. And in that, though, as an undergraduate at Harvard University, and I no longer know what they do here at the university, as an undergraduate at Harvard University, if I wanted to study the art from Europe, I went to the Fine Arts Department. If I wanted to study the art from Native America, I went to anthropology. And so what I'm saying is that in most the paradigm that is replicated in this country, the Eurocentric bias remains. And there is some perception that some people's knowledge is not as valid as others. And then in the times that that we face and the opportunities that we have, it will be incumbent upon us to not only recognize that the answer to the problems is not likely in the paradigm which created them, right? But also that we must really liberate our minds to allow for the knowledge and the teachings of many peoples and of the natural world to help us to become the nations and the society that we are. I with the ascendancy of Donald Trump, I had to play Do y'all know this Jackson Browne song? It's really a Stephen Van Zandt song, which is I Am a Patriot. Don't make me sing this all to you, but it's like, it basically is, I'm a patriot. And what I want to say is that I am very patriotic. But I am a patriot to this land. I'm not a patriot to this flag. So this is some of the Making America Great Again. For those of you who do not know, in a governance system which has clearly gone awry, there were some initial editing notes that made it go awry early. That is to say that when the founding fathers of this country came here, they had pretty much no idea of what democracy was. They had an idea that they wanted to live in some justice. But yet at the same time, they came from monarchy and feudalism. And so when they looked around, who they found who knew about democracy was, in fact, the Iroquois Confederacy. And the Iroquois Confederacy is a representational democracy that is about 1,000 years old. They got a pretty good record, and there's a lot to be learned from them. And so when the Founding Fathers was taking notes, though, they had some very significant omissions in the notes. The most significant omission, many of you know, was that what they did not note is that it was the women who appointed and removed the chiefs. Significant omission. Now, I think, as many of you do, that if they had taken better notes, things would have been a lot better all along, right? And basically, part of this lecture is that if y'all had been taking better notes all along, things would not be in the mess they're in. That's a lot of what this lecture is about. So I just want you to get that, right? Because we said that a long time ago. We said, that's how you're going to do it. Here's some of our, look at how did it, this is what happens. It goes on its own. It's like this spiritual PowerPoint. It moves on. That is agrobiodiversity. I talked a little bit about that. This is the cool agrobiodiversity. Isn't that cool? That's Pawnee eagle corn. Don't y'all wish you could do that? I mean, that's way above my head. I'm a corn grower, and I don't know how those guys do that, but they're they spiritually got that corn. In their story, just to say about the rights of nature, there's this term I heard used by the Hawaiians, which was, how do they call it? They call it, I forgot their genealogy, cosmogenealogy. Does that sound cool? Which means, it's your relationship to the world. And in their creation story, from what I understand, the older brother that was born first was Kalo, or taro. Taro? You know what I'm talking about? Taro that you make poi out of? Right? That was their older brother. And the younger brother was Kane, or the Hawaiian. And so when the proposal to genetically engineer the Kalo came up, they said no, because they could be genetically engineering our genealogy. I thought that was cool, huh? In the case of this corn, these people are Pawnees. And this corn, in their creation story, it is said that the first man arrived in a buffalo robe, and the first woman arrived in a corn husk. So that is why the rights of nature is entrenched in the knowledge of indigenous people. It's because we understand our relationship to everything, whether it is the great mountains or the great rivers or the corn and the kalo. That is a part of who has the rights, and that was also in that painting. This is what we continue to fight for today, and this is a little bit about what we call a traditional cultural landscape. That is to say that this is our wild rice harvest, and it is a part of our our migration story as Anishinaabe people, and it is also a part of the land upon which we live. And in the legal battles that we have ahead of us over pipelines and mining projects, one of the things that we are interested in, and we have spoken to the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund, very highly regarded in their work, is about the rights of wild rice and who will be the guardian of the rice. In this landscape, it is a being in itself, our rice, but in addition to being a being in this territory, it is a landscape within which we live. And this is how we live there. This is my reservation a couple years ago. It is most significant food for our territory, very much like the salmon for the people of the Northwest. This is our most significant and most sacred food. And so that is why Enbridge was not successful. It's because they did not understand. First, they didn't understand how many of us there were. And then they didn't. Look at that, just happened. I didn't even touch it. Did y'all see that? Isn't that great? All right. Continue, my friend. Oh, I just like that picture. But anyway. So, in the moment we are in now, oh, see, this is it. Isn't that great? This is the moment that we are in fact in. It is a choice between two worldviews. It is a choice between two worldviews. And the implications of those for the legal institutions that we have today. So indeed, don't move. We live in a society where the rights of corporations have eclipsed the rights of all of us. That is what you are seeing in North Dakota, because in no way is the behavior of those corporations, is that like normal, right? And part of the insanity is that we live in a society which is entirely addicted to fossil fuels. It would not really be our choice, but that's how we set it up. So if you think of this, in the past 50 years, the human population has doubled. The consumption of water has tripled, and the consumption of energy has quadrupled. Now, how's that going to work out? Not going to work out, right? And in that last one, we find the quandary that we are in. We refer to it as an era of extreme energy. And that's to say that whether it is the pipelines facing here in Oregon, or the tar sands pipelines or the coal terminals, we are these people that in the past 50 years, I've been doing it, y'all were partying with me, we've consumed half the world's known oil resources, right? And in that level of consumption, I didn't mean to do all that on my own, but I had a pretty good time. Did y'all have a pretty good time? It's okay. We can admit it. We had a pretty good time, right? I actually saw on my mother's table a couple days ago some flowers that had come directly from Colombia the day before, I'm sure. It's like that's what's happened to us, right? And we've become a little entitled, more than a little entitled. And we consume a third of the world's resources, something like that, right? So in that, we can talk about these ideas of the rights of nature versus the rights of corporations, but I'm an economist by training. We must fundamentally change how we live. Because the rights are a reflection of the society in which we live. So as I say that, we reach this point where what's left is really hard to get. When you consume half the world's resources, oil resources, and you get to the point we're at now, what's left is really hard to get. So you have a society which is super hardwired, and you begin doing crazy stuff to fill your addiction, basically. So you do stuff like drill 20,000 feet under the ocean and hope that's going to work out, right? It's not going to work out. We all know that. That's what happened with Deepwater Horizon. But we're like, we got the technology, we can do it. It's not going to work out. The only people who should be 20,000 feet under the ocean, as far as I'm concerned, are mermaids. That's my personal opinion, right? We do crazy things like blow off the top of 500 mountains in Appalachia, right? And act like that's normal behavior. Then we frack, which is busting up the bedrock of Mother Earth, putting 602 chemicals down there and hoping that's going to work out. And what goes down will not come up. We all know that's not going to work. And then we do the tar sands, right? And then we end up with these landlocked resources because we are replumbing the infrastructure of North America. Y'all know that, right? Because we are set up to import from the Gulf and from Venezuela, which has the largest oil reserves in the world. I don't know if anybody knows that. Largest oil reserves in the world are actually in Venezuela, not in Canada, and not in North Dakota. But we replumbed because of a lot of political reasons and a lot of greed, like the Koch brothers. And in that process, we ended up with where we're at now, which is a lot of super extreme behavior like MRAPs, like 485 people arrested, strip search for misdemeanors, hit with rubber bullets, bean bags, tear gas. And all they want to do is protect the water, right? That's like crazy stuff. but it's happening also in a crazy place, which is North Dakota, pretty much the Alabama of the North, right? And, so we end up with all this stuff going on, and it's pretty much like you end up in a situation where you have a society which is a junkie, and we're hanging out with dealers. And then you end up with a public policy which looks like what we got now, which is why the rights of nature and the movement to transform the legal institutions of this country is essential, because the legal institutions entirely reflect those interests in the behavior of an addict. And that's what we have to learn, and that's what we have to accept. So corporations have rights now that are considered persons under the law, and they are able to use corporate constitutional rights such as the First, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, 14th Amendment. And they often use them to override community decision-making and community law-making. Corporations are buttressed, obviously, by the military in this country, as we see in North Dakota and as we see elsewhere. And our regulatory institutions, I have spent 35 years fighting bad guys. I would really rather spend my time growing corn and hanging out with my horses, frankly. But I spent a lot of time fighting stupid projects. They're all stupid, like that methanol plant project that they're proposing. You know what I'm talking about? The twin methanol plants up here on Kalama, and then on the other side of the river here, to make some plastic for China, bringing in enough natural gas as I think what 5 power plants would consume in Washington State. Yeah, is that like a crazy project? What kind of more crazy? And 5 million gallons of water a day, right? So what kind of crazy on top of what kind of crazy is this? This is pretty much the behavior of addicts. And what has happened is that we have believed that our system would work. And what I think just about everybody in this room knows is that the system is not working. Now, we can act as if it is working, and we can pray that the Environmental Protection Agency will help us. But the fact is that the Environmental Protection Agency has pretty much become the Environmental Pollution Permitting Agency. And that's what they do. Very, 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 very few projects are actually stopped by the EPA. More projects in my history of 35 years of fighting projects are stopped by economics than by regulatory agencies. And so as we look with some despair at the incoming ascendancy of Mr. Trump, remember that is not the only way to fight things, is through the regulatory process. He does not control the world economy. He may think he does, but he does not. And a lot of these projects, the longer you fight them, the more expensive they become. That's my experience. But but at the same time, what we must do is we must be the people who understand clearly that it is incumbent upon us to transform the legal institutions that exist. So, I am reminded, and I will repeat it again at the end, that there is a movie tomorrow, which is on called The Doctrine of Discovery. I'm not going to give you the whole lecture on this, but it's at the Lane Community College Longhouse between 3 and 5 tomorrow. But that is the origin of some of your problem. Is that British common law was based on papal law, which is based on the doctrine of discovery, right? Y'all got that history lesson before, right? Some of you. The rest of you just go see this movie. I'll announce it again later. But what I'm saying is that the institutions are not, the legal institutions themselves have been flawed, and then regulatory capture, which is what occurs in North Dakota, is also influencing the implementation or the lack of implementation of whatever safeguards we have. But what we know is that slavery was at one point legal in this country. And it took individuals like you and me to abolish slavery. There was a point in this country where women did not have the right to vote. And it took people like you and me to change that. There was a point in this country where black people could not vote. And it took a lot of people, a lot of bodies, to ensure that those people had the right to vote. And so that is why the rights of nature then community rights is so essential. Is because every other mechanism is already, it hasn't been working out for us. And so it is our time to begin the process of recovering rights that will ensure that we can be people who hang out for a few more generations. You know? So the rights of nature, as you know, has been adopted by countries like Bolivia and Ecuador, which recognize the rights of Mother Earth to exist, the rights of living beings to exist, the rights of rivers to exist, not only to exist, but to flourish, to reproduce, and to be not toxified. Those are enshrined within some of those legal rights. A couple of months ago, actually it was in September. Is that a couple months ago? Yeah. The Ho-Chunk Nation, the General Council of the Ho-Chunk Nation overwhelmingly amended their constitution to enshrine the rights of nature. The Ho-Chunk Nation is the first tribal nation in the United States to take this critical step. In their rights of nature, they said ecosystems and natural communities within the Ho-Chunk territory. We're talking about the central part of what is today known as Wisconsin. That is Ho-Chunk territory. Ecosystems and natural communities within the Ho-Chunk territory possess an inherent, fundamental, and inalienable right to exist and thrive. Their amendment and resolutions further prohibited frack sand mining, fossil fuel extraction, and genetic engineering, considering those violations of the rights of nature. So I work most of my time with tribal communities, First Nations, and I am encouraging all of our First Nations and our tribal communities to undertake these regulatory changes. Because what I know is that if we are expecting leadership from Washington, it will not be coming anytime soon. So it is best that we undertake these within the arenas that are available to us. And our tribal nations, our First Nations, need to provide that leadership and that courage in our territories. So what are some elements from our perspective that this will look like? We'll talk about those in a minute. Look at that. I'll talk about that in a minute. What I would say is that if I was going to explain what the rights of nature from an Anishinaabe perspective, I would give you essentially 5 different facets of what that looks like. The first would be the understanding that the Creator's law is the highest law, higher than the laws made by nations, states, or municipalities, and one would do well to live in accordance with the Creator's law. In that, I would recognize, and we would recognize, the animate nature of the world. That is to say that in our language, the word asin, the word for stone, is an animate noun. That much of that which is around us has standing and spirit and needs to be recognized as having such and regarded as such. The term reciprocity is what is used to demarcate our own behavior as a community, whether it is economic behavior or cultural practice. That is to say, you are always grateful for that which you take, and you give thanks. You give a gift when you take something from the natural world. It is an economic practice, which is obviously not practiced in clear-cutting, in mining, or extractive industries. But in the process of reciprocity, that is how you reaffirm relationship to place. So what I'm saying is that there is a legal paradigm, and then there is a practice which essentially accompanies it. We say in Dinaway Muganatuk that we are all relatives. In that, what we understand is that there needs to be interspecies equity in all of our practices as a society. That we are all related, whether we have wings or fins or roots or paws. And each of those beings has a right to exist and have equity and access to their ecosystem. In other words, the rights of a salmon to not bash themselves to death up against a dam. The rights of a salmon to live or to return to their river is a right that is inherent in those beings and must be recognized in our practice and in our legal systems. And then in keeping with the teachings of perhaps the Iroquois Confederacy, who said it the best, what they said is, in each deliberation, we must consider the seventh generation from now. That would be known as intergenerational equity. But that also would be known in some legal paradigms, as many of those have been as adopted in many European countries, the precautionary principle. You don't do dumb stuff now and expect future generations to take care of it. Because we are the people who are privileged to be here. And in this privilege of this moment of time, we must look out for those who have not yet arrived, and honor those who came before us. So this is the pipeline we just defeated. And then I go home for another pipeline that they have announced. 760,000 barrel a day tar sand pipeline. So as you look, understand that they are replumbing North America's infrastructure. And it is not just one pipeline. You all know the Kinder Morgan pipelines. There's pipeline after pipeline. And what I want to say to you is that in this moment we are in, it is really important to remember that we live in a country that is a first world country with a D in infrastructure. You have bridges which collapse. You have water mains, gas mains which explode. You have 50-year-old pipelines that go through pristine areas of northern Minnesota that they now propose to abandon and make new lines. What we live in is a country with this D in infrastructure. And, what I feel like saying is that I am actually not opposed to pipelines. I'm really a big fan of water and sewer lines. And as I look at the 300 miles of pipeline that is sitting in piles in northern Minnesota from a line that Enbridge, the largest pipeline company in the world, has abandoned. Every time I look at those lines, those pipes, I say, why don't they just ship those pipes to Flint? We are a country that can use infrastructure. Do not always be against infrastructure. But what we want is infrastructure for people, not for oil companies. We want jobs that make sense like that. And this is what I think, we refer to it as the Dakota Access Pipeline. And we refer to it as the Dakota Access Pipeline for a couple of reasons. One is this is the actual life of a fracking well in North Dakota. It is 5 years. They have to keep putting in new wells because they're at the bottom of the barrel. So you put all those explosives down there, all those chemicals down there, and your whole line only lasts 5 years. So you have to keep producing. Right now in North Dakota, they are producing 900,000 barrels a day of oil. They are at the bottom of their boom. I think a lot of you know this, right? It has bottomed out in North Dakota. There are very few trains going my way of bombs, and all of the oil that is going out of North Dakota is already leaving North Dakota at present. It is already going out there, either on train or on pipeline. And what I want to say is that the North Dakota Department of Mines and Energy has announced that in 2019, 2 years from now, or 3 years from now, there will be 900,000 barrels of oil a day going out of North Dakota. So what I want to say is that there's 900,000 barrels a day going out now. And in 2 years, there'll be 900,000 barrels a day. So what I'm trying to understand, which we should all be wondering about, is where 560,000 barrels a day of oil is going to come from. And that is why we call it the Dakota Access Pipeline. It's the Dakota Access Pipeline. There is no need for that pipeline. The only thing that is clear is that the hatred of the state of North Dakota for the Lakota people is blatantly clear. The greed of Energy Transfer Partners and Enbridge is blatantly clear. And the civil crisis that exists in our society as we watch the aggression and abuse of human rights for the benefit of a private corporation is egregious to this country. Now, we did a little figuring. We figured that the $3.9 billion that they want to spend on the Dakota Access Pipeline could do some better things. You could, for $3.9 billion, put 64,629 5-kilowatt solar panels on the houses of North Dakota. You could put 300, as well as 323 2-megawatt wind turbines. And then I think another 61,000 houses could be retrofitted. So what I'm saying is that the crime is ecological, the crime is political, and the crime is also a crime of wasting so much resources on nothing that we need. When in fact what this country needs is to move from fossil fuels. Here's your methanol plant. World's largest gas to methanol facility. That's what you guys are looking at. So fight your own battles over here too while you're at it, okay? There's plenty of you. This is what the future looks like. You know, this is the foundation for an Earth Lodge out there in Mandan territory. This is what the future looks like. This is a project I worked on at Navajo, 25 kilowatts of solar on Navajo Tribal College, using pollution credit money from the now defunct Mojave generating station. Don't just say no, articulate what you want, and make America great in our own way. This is what energy production could look like in our own territories. And I want to say that while Trump ascended to the presidency, in the state of Florida, there was a measure on the ballot which would allow people to hook up to the grid with their houses for solar. You know, each house, right? Florida, we're talking sunny place, right? $20 million was spent by the utilities to oppose that ballot measure, and they lost. And they lost. So in the time ahead of us, it is very important that we take terrain where we can. Do not let their fear and their hatred stop us or paralyze us in our work. Because there is much work to be done, and it is in many arenas. So feel emboldened by our opportunities. This is my community. As I look at where we are and where we are going, you know, this is a film that was done on the village of Pine Point, the community that I live closest to. And the film is called The Seventh Fire. I don't actually recommend you see it, but it's pretty widely shown. And it's, you know, a snapshot of some drug dealers in our village. We have a lot of meth and heroin. We have a lot of bad things in my village. And our village didn't like this movie much. You know, because it felt like, I guess it's called poverty porn. Do you know what I'm talking about? You know, it's true what happened there, but that is not all us. So in my community, you know, as my tribe looks at the rights of nature, looks at following the state of Minnesota and passing a hemp ordinance, looks at our next round of battle against the largest oil pipeline company in North America and prepares for that battle with full artillery and full weaponry. We look to our village and say, we will make the life that we intend to have. And so in our prophecies, they say that this is the time of the seventh fire. And in that time, it is said that we have a choice between two paths. One path, they say, is well-worn, but it is scorched. The other path, they say, is not well-worn, and it is green. And it is our choice upon which path to embark. And in that, this is the choice that we make in our village. I was inspired by, I keep forgetting what it's called. It's in the Mission in San Francisco. There's an alley. Balmy? Yeah. B-A? Like balmy, like a balmy day? Balmy Alley. There we go. Take a look at it. Every garage on the backside of that alley is painted with a different mural. So I decided that the village that people, you know, said was like where you could go get meth should be the village of art. And so we have 6 murals so far. We're doing some solar. That's my solar panel, 2.4. That says solar thermal. And we'll probably be fighting the utility pretty soon, but I figure that we're going to set up our own microgrid. And our own Public Utilities Commission, because we're a tribe. So I might as well just do it, right? I'm kind of we could wait for them to fix it for us, but I don't think that's happening. Isn't that cool? That's our water tower. It was all tagged. This is a cool dude. For my community, his name is Nagani Benes. I have this painting in my living room, but it's like, it looks out there, and that's what the future looks like. That's really up to us. The regulatory systems and the laws that we will create that support the rights of nature, the rights of beings to exist, will be complemented by our work in our communities, because laws are a reflection of the beauty of your society. So, as I thought about what I was going to tell y'all, I have some good friends here that join me. I got my friend Riverstone, he was with me. He's over there. But this is a guy named Waylon. And we just rode the proposed DAPL route, a couple 100 miles. I just like that guy's airborne. You see that? He's pretty much airborne. And there was this great Matthew King quote. He was one of the great leaders of the Lakota Nation. He passed away. I had a real privilege of interviewing him. One time he said, I heard him say one time, the only thing sadder than an Indian who isn't free is the Indian who doesn't remember what it's like to be free. It's a little bit like, that ecological amnesia. We're not going to forget. And we're going to be those people. And those same people, they told me this story about being in a sweat lodge. And in that sweat lodge, they was getting in there, these Lakota guys, these Oglala guys. And they said they was getting in there and they was kind of, kidding around and talking smack. Let's just be honest. They was just talking about stuff, this and that. And he did that and who did that, what happened and how council did this and how this guy didn't do this, I just want you to know we all talk smack sometimes, right? So he's talking smack as they're getting in the sweat lodge. I don't want to say that report that they were doing it in the sweat lodge. I wasn't with them, but I saw this quote, and I asked him where this quote come from, and he says, this is where it come from, Auntie. He says, we was in the sweat lodge, and we was all talking some smack, this, that. And all of a sudden, this spirit came into the lodge. And this is what this spirit said to us. This spirit said, how long are you going to let others determine the future for your children? Are we not warriors? When our ancestors went into battle, they did not know what the consequences were going to be. All they knew is that if they did nothing, things would not go well for their children. Do not operate out of a place of fear. Operate out of hope. With hope, everything is possible. Time is now. Movement's here. Miigwech, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you. So there it goes. It's all good. It's all good.
Keep it up there. Okay. Well, thank you for that wonderful speech, and I want to. We have time for just about 2 or 3 questions from tribal members or students up here, because I think it's important for everybody else to hear conversations between Native leaders as well. So if there are any questions from the tribal audience or students here as well, please raise your hand, and Kathy Lynn will be so kind as to bring the mic over.
Okay, I got to say a couple things I promised to say. So first of all, we have this really great event tomorrow night. And we have an event tomorrow during the day. That is at Lane Community College between 3 and 5, 4000 East 30th Street, and that is the film The Doctrine of Discovery. And then, Riverstone, what did I do with that one thing here? I know I got it sitting right here. We're having a big fundraiser tomorrow night for Honor the Earth and for the work at the opposing the Dakota Access Pipeline. Here it is. Oh, thank God. Chad Wilkins Trio, Water Protectors Benefit Concert. That is at World Pies. Is that what it's called? All right, 7 o'clock. I'm going to be at this. Seems like a really cool thing. 7 o'clock at World Pies tomorrow night. So everybody come and hang out. That's a benefit for Water Protectors and for Honor the Earth. And then last couple things I just want to say is I brought about 20 of my latest book. I'm going to give you one. And then we have some rice, but we're going to sell that after. So I have to say that. Now we have some questions, but I had to make those PSAs before.
Okay. Tats Kalawit, Makis Katsiauyao, Inamas Wanik, Sierra Green, Inamas Nimipu. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Sierra Green. I'm a Nez woman, and I had the honor of listening to you last night and tonight, and I know what I would say if I was up on stage, but I want to give you the opportunity to also share this message for others to hear. In a room full of enlightened people, how can we go forward and inspire and empower our youth and our coworkers and the people who aren't in this room with us and may not be on the same page? So how can we go forward? And there's a lot to think about with education reform, but in our own communities and our everyday lives, how can we empower our youth?
I just want to encourage you all in what you're doing to find your beauty and to find your power. All of us, because, in our communities, there is such a wellspring upon which to draw. And we draw on that if we are grounded. And so we need to be really well grounded. And then we need other people to support us in this work. And, now is really the time. To me, one of the most important things to think about, because it is really a time that, as Sitting Bull said, we must, put our minds together. We must all put our minds together. This is not the time to be islands of political correctness unto ourselves. This is not the time to be divided in all our little special, This is the time to figure out how to work much stronger together, Native and non-Native, and as Native people together, and support each other in our communities. I know what lateral oppression looks like and feels like. I've been there, and it is past that. And so just know that you are loved by your elders, and that, we are just full of hope and love for you in the time ahead. And we have we fully believe that you guys got this.
Estem Chalit, Gwen Netoyet, Tlahi Kaleen. I'm the leader of the Winona Wintu people, and watching the Dakota Access Pipeline atrocities to many, many people. But many of the people from California are going out there, and people from Hawaii that I know personally are being maced or being hit with rubber bullets. And one of the things that I'm trying to do now is, because of the things that you talked about the spirit beings, our connection to this land, that the harm that has been happened isn't those rubber bullets. It isn't the mace. It's that connecting us in that strength of way to continue to stand there, continue to go there. And like these students are saying, is that we have to keep one foot right next to that corn, right next to that water, right next to that salmon, and know that because salmon gave us the voice, we've got to continue to speak. But prayers is a big thing, and so we're going out there and hopefully help those who have gotten hit, those who have fallen, to help stand them back up. and getting into protocol, because I'm not from there, but my people are there, and getting the right to come in and hold ceremony in our way for these people, and finding who is it that you talk to, who is it that you go to. We're sending out requests, and some folks are trying to help us do this, but we're not used to 7 degrees weather, and what kind of firewood, that kind of thing. But what I guess my thing is that not only, like you were saying, not only do we need coats, but we need meat, and we need, all kinds of things to be able to stand up. But we also, I think, need prayers from wherever they can come from, because what those folks are going through, our defenders, are getting, treated in a way that they're not going to be the same when they come home. They're not going to be the same. They're not the same now. And so we have to do those dances. We have to sing those songs, and to help them in that way. And so just asking you, to help us get through to the right people, if you can. Oh, chala.
I just want to thank you for that, Kayleen, and I'll of course I will talk to you about who, but for those of you who go out there, please do be self-sufficient, and also I also encourage non-Indian people to go to Bismarck and to talk to the non-Indian people there, like come and support us at the camp, but then also go to this town, because the people of North Dakota, they are not all racist, they are not all haters. But they are self-silencing, and they are afraid to speak out. And so the more people that look like them, that come from other places, like church people, go talk to them, and say, time to stand up. This is your Selma moment. Time to stand up, North Dakota. And that's what it is. It's North Dakota's Selma moment. And so be present for them, And then for the Native people, that is right. I have niece, nephew, 2 staff, been arrested, strip searched, attempt to humiliate, a lot of my people. And they are very strong people. 2 thoughts on that is, when people return from that, you are right. They need ceremony. I feel like I myself, veteran of domestic wars. That's what they are. They are veterans of domestic wars. So honor them as such. And there are a lot of people here that are similarly veterans of these domestic wars, So honor their courage like that. And then just, reaffirm it. Because in court, a couple weeks ago, I heard 2 things. One, Lakota guy in court only speaks Lakota. I think he followed that Hawaiian case of Mauna Kea that Pua told us, right? Only speaks Lakota. The judge says to him, "Sir, the language of this court is Lakota." His response, "The language of this territory." No, she said, "The language of this court is English." He said, "The language of this territory is Lakota." Second guy stands up. She says, "How do you plead?" He's only talking Blackfeet. She says, "How do you plead to the charge of trespassing?" He says, "Not trespassing, stolen land." Right? So I'm saying, and then she says, "How do you plead to the charge of rioting?" He says, "Praying is not rioting." And I think you saw that. I think there was 150 people that had the felony charges dismissed against them this last Thursday or Friday, right? Y'all see that? That's right. So stand with our people. Stand with our people. And if you come there, be self-sufficient and be spiritually strong. Do not come to us for spiritual support. You need to support us.
Can I have Chief Brainerd and Naomi Strausser come up? Naomi Strausser is representing Lakota Oyate Ki, which is the Native Men's Society at the Oregon State Penitentiary. And so she, on behalf of the Tribal Liaison's Office at the University of Oregon, is going to give this gift to Winona LaDuke. So, Chief Miigwech, thank you so much for coming. On behalf of all of us at the U of O. And Chief Brainerd.
In our tradition of giving, you have gifted us with the wisdom and guidance and education, and we must return the gift. So in our tradition, I'd like to gift you with this.
Wow, that's like really cool. Is that like the cool hat?
That's
the cool hat.
I
always wanted the cool hat. Thank you so much. I wonder if I can wear it when I ride, huh?
And the gift of the sign of the water is life.
Thank you so much.
And a cedar basket with cedar boughs traditionally is to carry the good thoughts to all around the world. Thank you.
So with that, we close, and I want to thank you all again for coming out tonight, and be sure and stop by those tables on the way out, and don't let it stop here. Carry it forward, carry it on out into your communities and wherever you go. Thank you so much again to Winona LaDuke.